This video is about run-ons, which are also called run-togethers or fused sentences. They all mean the same thing. It's always best to start with the definition. Unfortunately, too often, we get definitions from our teachers that aren't very good. This one, for instance, a sentence that is too long. This is a really bad definition of a run-on. I've seen sentences, complete sentences, that are full page long. Here's another poor definition, a sentence that goes on and on. I don't even know what that means. Now, this is a definition that's worth memorizing because it is a good definition for a run-on. However, this definition too has its shortcomings because it uses grammar speak. Independent clauses, for example, we have to be reminded of what that is. So an independent clause is a group of words that has a subject, has a verb, and expresses a complete thought. And for those of you paying attention, you'll also recognize this as a definition of a sentence. There's a good reason for that. When an independent clause is punctuated like a sentence, it becomes a sentence. However, a problem occurs when you have two independent clauses joined without punctuation. This again is the definition of a run-on with the emphasis on the word without punctuation between. Here's an example of a run-on sentence. The human brain is like a computer. It can store lots of information. Now, many of you might realize where the run-on takes place. You can tell that there's a big pause somewhere in the sentence. But looking for pauses in sentences isn't the best way to find out if you have a run-on or not. I first need to find out if I have independent clauses anywhere. So the first thing I need to do is look for a verb. And sure enough, I find a verb right away in the word is. So then I need to figure out, does this verb have a subject? To find the subject, I ask who or what is like a computer. The answer will lead me to the subject. The human brain is like a computer, therefore the subject is human brain. The final step in figuring out whether that group of words is an independent clause is to figure out if it expresses a complete thought. Sure enough, in this case it does. The human brain is like a computer. So I have a group of words that has a subject, a verb, and expresses a complete thought. I have an independent clause. I'm halfway done to figuring out whether I have a run-on or not. Now I have to go through the same steps with the remainder of the sentence. I find it best just to cover up or get rid of that first part of the sentence and then start from scratch. Do I have a verb? In this case, yes I do. It's can store. Does that verb have a subject? What can store lots of information? The answer is it. It can store lots of information. So my subject is it. Now, many of you might not like that, but pronouns can indeed be subjects of sentences. We use them all the time. Lastly, I need to figure out if it expresses a complete thought. It can store lots of information. It could stand alone as a sentence. Again, it may seem a little weird because I'm using a pronoun rather than something specific, but grammatically, it does indeed express a complete thought. So here again, I have a subject, verb, complete thought, which means I have an independent clause. So let's take a step back for a moment. I have a group of words punctuated like a sentence, but within that sentence, I have two independent clauses joined without punctuation. And the key here is without punctuation. If you remember, by definition, this is a run-on. Two independent clauses joined without punctuation. While not the easiest, this process is a great way to find run-ons in your writing. And soon you'll get the hang of it. You'll be writing less run-ons as a result, and consequently you won't have to look for them as much. To be honest, finding run-ons is the most difficult part of the whole process. Fixing run-ons is really, really easy. In fact, you have 4 different ways of fixing a run-on. Method 1 is to simply add a period. Break this into 2 sentences. We have 2 independent clauses, we can make them 2 distinct sentences. I just have to make sure to capitalize that next to the second sentence. Simple, fixed. Method 2 is to add a semicolon. Be a little cautious here. You can live a long, fulfilling life without ever using the semicolon, and just make sure that the second part of the sentence relates directly to the first part. Method 3 is to add a comma and a coordinating conjunction. In case you've forgotten what those coordinating conjunctions are, they're also known as fanboys. It's an acronym for and, nor, but, or yet so. And here I have the human brain is like a computer, comma, for it can store lots of information. Finally is method 4, which for some reason instructors really like. You make one of the independent clauses a dependent clause. And there are lots of words you can use to make that happen, and I'm going to show you 2 examples. Here I've made the second one a dependent clause. Because it can store lots of information, cannot stand alone as a sentence. It's dependent upon something else. In fact, in this case, it's dependent on the first half of the sentence. Alternately, I could switch that around and put the because at the beginning of the first part. Because the human brain is like a computer could not stand alone as a sentence, and therefore it is a dependent clause. Notice though there's a comma rule here too, that when the dependent clause comes before the independent clause, it gets a comma. That's really all there is to run-ons. You just have to be diligent about finding them in your writing and using a variety of methods to fix them.